Welcome back to iHeartRadio's So Bad It's Good. Today, I am so thrilled to have our next guest. My friend Mindy recommended her and said, hey, you should talk to my friend because I think I had mentioned on a podcast about wanting to go a little bit deeper in some of the behavior that we're seeing, especially with Scandival and Vanderpump Rules. Now, behavior is such an interesting topic because, especially in reality shows, is that these are such elevated personalities, but at the same time, they have this kernel of truth that we kind of recognize because we see some of this behavior, hopefully not all of this behavior, in ourselves. But I wanted to try to put a little more language around that and a little more thought around that. So we have our guest today who is an ex-forensic therapist where she did personality profiling and took assessments for ex-cons recently released from federal prison. Like, that's already blowing my mind. Her interest is in neuroscience, neuroplasticity, and epigenetics, which led her to establishing her private practice in 2010, where she coaches executives and celebrities as an executive leadership coach and integrative health coach. I literally already need to hire her myself. But her passion is helping her clients upgrade and optimize their psychological, emotional, and physical health, as well as improve and thrive in their relationships and career, which I think Tom Sandoval needs now more than ever. But I just wanted to welcome to the show, Lauren Clayton. Lauren, thank you so much for being here.
Ryan, thank you so much for having me.
I listen, that is, I want you on a reality show now. Like, this is, that is, the history that goes into that. I'm going to jump into all of this. I made her watch Vanderpump Rules this season, even though she's like you're a Housewives fan yourself, right? You've watched Housewives for a long time.
I took a sabbatical. I did start watching Housewives of Beverly Hills again, and I know I like Vanderpump Rules, so it was great to catch up.
Well, but coming from your background, when you watch something like this, are you able to even enjoy the show, or do you look at it with this clinical eye of like, whoa, the behavior that's being exhibited is out of control?
Both, both. It's not that it's out of control. I'm just like they're on their journey, and there's a lot of different things going on. And before I get all into that, I'm going to use the personality disorders and profiling kind of framework. But in no
Yeah.
way, this is for entertainment purposes only. In no way
Yes.
am I diagnosing anyone or anything
Guys,
like
that's something
that.
that is something I've learned in the last month is that I cannot diagnose anybody. If I say Tom Sandoval is a narcissist, that's not meaning I'm diagnosing him. It's just a pattern of behavior for me reading the internet, which is not the place to diagnose anybody. I can't, and you are a professional and you still can't diagnose somebody. So that is something that that's such an important thing. Thank you for thinking of that up top. I guess let's start with you a little bit before we get into the Vanderpump of it all. Tell us how you even came into this career. Like, how do you even study for this? How do you even know you're interested in this? What is your background?
Yeah, it kind of found me. I thought I wanted to be a family therapist, and the forensic psychology was one of my last internships. And it was just a really good internship, and I thought it would look good on my resume. And I just really ended up enjoying these people, especially I worked with people that were convicted for drug-related offenses. So, a lot of them came out of prison. They're like, Miss Lauren, I'm just an entrepreneur. If you could show me how to sell something legally and make money, I'm down. And so I really enjoy. It was just a very good experience and helped me so much. But and this kind of goes along with the personality disorders thing that we're talking about. I'm not a super big fan of traditional therapy. I don't think it's good. I think like the DSM is great framework for like all the personality disorders to conceptualize things, especially if you're a victim of narcissistic abuse, like understanding where it comes from. But pigeonholing people and coming from a place of you're this and you're this illness, I don't think it's the best opportunity for growth, which is why I started my coaching practice. I wanted a more integrative, holistic approach.
Which that's more of the neuroscience, neuroplasticity, all of that stuff, which is, how do you recognize that you're good at something like this? How do you how does something like this actually is, I think I have a calling for this. Does what you do now, does it feel like a calling?
Oh, it absolutely feels like a calling. And all I know is that I love the transformation process. I love when people, especially when people are kind of at their rock bottom moment and they're like, this needs to change. I work with imposter
Lauren,
syndrome.
I'm here. I'm right here, right now. This is my rock bottom moment. This is, let's use me. We can diagnose me. I mean, but you, I mean, sorry, you talk about imposter syndrome, which already I was like, that's me. Yes.
Oh, well, good. I'll talk about that more. I just released a program for imposter syndrome, but I really think it's a spiritual journey because it's kind of like, okay, here's my gifts, skills, talents, and abilities, but all this, whatever is holding me back, we all have that. And watching people move through that and transform and be able to optimize their life, live their highest and best, whatever that means for them, I love that process. So yes, I do feel like it's like my calling.
I always think about people repeating patterns in their lives. Like we all do it in a small scale, and we also do it in a much larger scale in terms of relationships and things like that. And in fact, you could even say Tom Sandoval is doing a little bit of this right now. But is there, I've read so many different things about, minuscule change can happen, but a person can't really change in the course of their lives because they're going to keep going back and hitting the same note. Do you disagree with that?
I do. I mean,
Yeah,
have
I
you
would
had,
imagine you would have to. Yeah.
I think it's about your willingness, right? The only person that can change somebody is you. So if you have the willingness, yes, you'll change. And does that process suck at times? Yes, it very much sucks. And it's very easy to just go back into your old comfortable behavior patterns where you kind of got what you wanted out of it. But of course, I feel like people can change if they want to, and if they have the willingness, and if they're willing to do the hard work. And that's why it takes rock bottom moments sometimes where it's like everything has to shatter, everything has to fall apart. You have to get humiliated on a reality TV show, whatever. Like things like that have
Well,
to happen.
yeah. By the way, that's really what we're potentially dealing with here. But it also so much of it involves the ego, and
Yeah.
especially when you're on a reality television show, a lot of these people, their egos are in hyperdrive. Like they are at such a not, I don't want to say a godlike power, but like celebrity culture and things like that kind of, we're all talking about them. That's a very powerful thing. But
Mhm.
you have to almost break an ego to like start over and try to rebuild. I mean, with Tom Sandoval, what we're going through right now. I mean, I guess this, when you started this season from the beginning, I mean, and watching up to now, what were your overall vibes? As somebody that was like, yeah, I'm hearing crazy things, but to go see some of this yourself and then read what is going on with the Scandival, because as we all know now, we've talked about every day on this show, Sandoval was cheating on Ariana with Raquel for 8 months, and they are still together. He got busted. It wasn't like he came clean. He got caught. And this has all just exploded. And it's been a month now of this. What was your overall view though, then watching the show? Because none of this is in the show yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Tough
Well,
stuff.
that's
Tough
why
stuff. Tough
it's
stuff.
it's really it's really interesting. And what I mean, we all have this voyeuristic side to us, right?
Yes.
Reality
Yeah.
TV show would I'm sorry, reality TV shows would not be popular if it wasn't. And just to give a little psychological background on that, we like that, and our pleasure zones kind of fire up like when we watch these shows because you've been cheated on or you've been the cheater, and you've been close enough to that situation and experienced all the things. But when you're watching someone else do it, you can see it all happen without the stressful negative consequences. So there's something very addictive about that. Like the dopamine's going and it's like, okay, I can be involved in this. And also we see ourselves in these people. And then, if we've gone through that or we're currently going through something like that, there is some type of like pair bonding that goes on with I'm feeling your pain. So and there's like
Yeah.
some like a oxytocin, there's a connection, like a chemical bond that gets released. Just to, I don't know, I always like prefacing it with that because it's kind of like, yeah, of course, this is why we like watching this stuff.
No,
But
it really is interesting to watch it from this perspective because, like you said, potentially you've been cheated on or you've been the cheater, and these are things that we can all recognize. I think there's a shock level to it after you've been 10 seasons with these people and they're still making these horrific mistakes, because then that goes to your point of there's not a lot of change happening. A lot of these characters on Vanderpump Rules in particular and reality shows will always kind of go to the tried and true statement of, I'm a work in progress. But it never seems like they're working on themselves and they're never progressing on themselves. But this was wild because with Tom Sandoval, he was somebody that I think we all kind of believed in, that he wasn't one of the dog guys. He was, he wanted his little weird side projects with his band, but he truly was in love with this girl from what we saw on television.
But see, I think that was a red flag, especially how they
Of course,
how
yes.
they how they showed it this season. Like all this stuff's going on, you're stressed out, and when you're, I mean, opening a restaurant, I used to be a waitress and a host, so I know that it's stressful. So if you got a moment to yourself, why wouldn't you spend it with your partner instead of, oh, I need to have my creative outlet? Like, go fucking paint something with your girl. Like, why are you going off and abandoning your business partner and your girlfriend to go start a band when everything else is going on? There's a lack of responsibility for other relationships. It's like, I'm stressed out, I'm going to start a band and kind of like abandon this, and then I'm going to come back and it's all about my needs. And so a lot of,
ooh, I like that. You're right. There's a very much my needs to it. You're exactly right. Yeah.
And there's just kind of like my needs, this is the hierarchy, and then everything else is kind of secondary. But the bar, it's like, okay, how is that going to help me? And then with the Ariana and the whole scandal, it's kind of like, well, what ego strokes were getting met from that situation? And
or the ego strokes not getting met that would actually create you doing something potentially with another woman.
Absolutely. And I do think so. There is some, and again, this is just framework to understand things. There is some narcissistic and like sociopathic tendencies within that Sandoval situation, because, and by narcissistic, I mean just focused on yourself, or what could also be called like antisocial behavior, like the deceitfulness and the just like the compulsive lying. I'm gonna actually pull it up because it's like to not, so people are like,
yeah,
like
just paraphrase, yeah.
Yeah, disregard for other people's needs, like the manipulation, just like what we would like an overarching like shadiness, to not use a clinical term, is like some of the antisocial behavior that Sandoval is exhibiting in this situation. And with Raquel, so Raquel gets out of a relationship with
DJ James Kennedy.
James Kennedy, who also has narcissistic tendencies and
yeah, he does.
alcoholism, right? And alcoholism can mirror a lot of narcissistic tendencies. And so you have this dynamic. So you're someone that's drawn to that. So who is drawn to that? Borderline personality disorders, they kind of pair well together. And then people that have codependent tendencies, where they kind of like abandon their life for the narcissist or the alcoholic. And remember when Raquel and Ariana and Katie, I think it was, they were having like girls, like,
yeah,
whatever.
And she was like, I
didn't think you
yeah.
No,
I didn't think you had it in you, Raquel. Yes.
And then Raquel goes, I don't even know who I am anymore. Yeah, because when you get out of a relationship like that, you've abandoned your needs so much that you really don't know who you are, because it's been all about the alcoholic or the narcissist, and like amalgamated, mixed with the fact that Raquel has some borderline tendencies, like black and white, like I'm going to be seductive, and like I'm going to, so it's kind of like, I'm in pain, I'm hurting, so I'm going to not care about what's going on with it or who I'm going to hurt to get my like ego needs met, because that seemed like a really traumatic breakup.
It did seem like a traumatic breakup, which I still don't fully know the ins and outs. And I think we're finding as we keep going. And it's, because it's interesting too. I always say with all these other characters now in retrospect, taking this moral high ground when they all each have their individual big issues that they are now ignoring so they can put all their hate on Sandoval and Raquel, which is interesting. But yeah, Raquel we see as a very lost person and dealing with DJ James Kennedy and other situations of her past. But then in going to Tom Sandoval, who is another, like I said, we're not diagnosing, but has narcissistic tendencies. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that just be falling in the same pattern, but with a more positive person? Like he exhibits narcissism in a positive way, I think Sandoval does, because he's not like, chewing people's head off, calling everybody fat like DJ James Kennedy does.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? Like, is it just swapping one for the other?
No, so there are different types of narcissism, but the two main types are like the overt narcissism, as it's called, what you think of like the ego driven, I mean all the time. And then there's the covert narcissism, which you see a lot of in that show, especially with Sandoval, where it's kind of like, everyone likes me. I'm just, and they, covert narcissists come off like that. Like they have a lot of good, they're all like superficial relationships. And beneath that, there's a lot of shadiness and there's a lot of like, I will fuck you over. Like you're my friend, but I'll
but
fuck
does that
you over.
person recognize it? Does
No.
that narcissist recognize their own behavior of like, I'll fuck anybody over, these are all superficial relationships on top? Do they recognize?
That's more on the sociopathic side. They'll be like, yeah, and I'll do that. Like they're owning it, and like because the empathy is so low, and a lot of theories are that they don't have any empathy. But with the covert narcissist, there is, and there is afterwards. There's a little bit of empathy, and there's a lot of debate as to whether like that's genuine or not. But in the moment, there's this compulsive like reactivity to it, mixed with a lot of alcohol. I mean, everything, every character defect is like exploded and like
that's
on
another character 10. On the show. Yeah, it's another character.
Seriously, it's like everything with like the alcohol. I mean, that is a character. It's just, it makes everything worse. So these impulsive decisions, when you already have some of these maybe character opportunities for growth, like character defects or whatever, like we all do. We all have those. I have them. Everyone has them. So, but with this set of character defects, like they just really get heightened and triggered when alcohol is involved. And so you're just impulsive. You're not thinking about, if you're ready, like if your baseline is to not think about anyone else and you get some alcohol in it, you're really not thinking about anyone else.
Well, I also thought you said opportunities for growth. And I just thought, wouldn't that be great if like a season of reality television, they were promoting it like, this season, you're going to see a lot of opportunities for growth. Like, we don't want that. We want this. Well, we say we want all of this, but then we're experiencing it with Sandoval at such at a level where it's so intense and so brutal. And it kind of, and I know this sounds, listen, I'm treating this very seriously, you guys. And usually I do a comedy podcast, but there is something very dark in this where it makes you kind of face your own behavior and really start to question how you treat people and how you treat people in your life and really what you're trying to get out of things. And I think reality shows at their best can kind of be a light lesson. I don't think you can truly, you shouldn't be taking any kind of social cues from these people, but you might get some warning signs on how to potentially stop some of your behavior. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree with that. And that's again to my point, or like we were talking about how we see ourselves in these people or their situations, especially the pain points where we've been victimized. It's easier to see. And there's a thing called the shadow, which I have him in the back. Freud and Jung, he's on that side. But
I had Freud on the pod last week. I know who he is. Yeah, I'm joking.
No, but the shadow side is that when we get triggered or we're like repulsed by something or we're angry, like, oh, Sandoval cheated. Like when you have those big reactions, like the word trigger is very popular right now. So when you're triggered by something, the idea of the shadow is that unconsciously or maybe subconsciously, there's something in you that could cheat or fuck someone over. Yes. Or
that's
right.
It.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like that shadow. So anytime you're getting triggered by watching TV or anything, if that's like a true trigger for you and you're getting upset, there is some shadow work to do there. It's like, well, what in me would do that or that I can't? And a lot of times it's so unconscious that there's no way, I'm just mad at that because that happened to me. But if you've truly made peace with it and integrated that experience, you just don't get triggered by it. So that is something.
I love that. I was going back to your comment about sociopaths in some way about lack of empathy. And I think as a human being, one of the greatest strengths we have, I mean, I guess you could consider it a weakness too, but is the caring about other people. I mean, like, listen, we even care about these reality TV stars. That's why we're talking about them all the time. That's why you're listening to this right now is you know, as humans, isn't that how do you teach somebody to care? How does somebody literally have zero empathy? And what does a human go through, in your opinion, where they start to not care about these people that they profess love to and are in long-term relationships with? What is the potential thought process that goes into, whether it be a shadow life, but just this intense hurt that they're going to cause? Do they just block that out completely and just go towards carnal pleasure, or like what is the thought process for some of these things that are horrible?
Yeah, so there's a lot of unintegrated shadow work there. And sociopath, any of the personality disorders, so narcissism, borderline, histrionic, antisocial, and sociopath, like it's called cluster B of, and you look it up, it's actually super interesting. But all of that is, those are trauma responses. So you're not born a narcissist or any of these things. And we, it's a sliding scale. We all have a little bit of like, they're just ways, they're defense structures, right? And when it's a really intense personality disorder, it's because you're so highly defended, and it's just like all of this unhealed things that you haven't worked on that are just based on previous trauma, and trauma is subjective. A lot of people that are like, I grew up so great and da da da. Well, then why are all your relationships fucked up and like you're cheating? You know what I mean? Maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
there's some things that it's okay that your parents weren't perfect or whatever. So it's just unintegrated and unhealed trauma that, I mean, sometimes some of this stuff happens to us when we're pre-verbal and we're, our parents were fighting, and as like babies, and we absorb a lot from the time that we're born, which is kind of intense to think about, but by the time we're, from when we're born to when we're like 6 years old, we're sponges and absorbing a lot. So if your parents or you're around certain things, or you just got the neural pathways. This is why I love neuroplasticity and neuroscience, is like these neural
Wait,
pathways.
sorry to be ignorant, but what
I
is
know.
neuroplasticity? I was reading that, I
Oh,
was like, what the heck is neuroplasticity?
I'll tell you right now. So like, you get like whatever, like let's say the thing is that relationships are chaotic. So you grow up thinking relationships are consciously or unconsciously, and then so you have a bunch of chaotic relationships. The neuroplasticity piece is you've been firing and wiring a certain way. Relationships are chaotic. I'm seeking them. I'm attracting them. Even unconsciously, I'm attracting them. But you can break that pattern. It's like software that you can choose to actually uninstall anytime and then download better software. I say this to my clients all the time. I'm like, okay, you're running on Windows 93. Like maybe back in the day in 93, like that, like running your relationships work that way, but you seem to be suffering a lot right now. So you want to like let's uninstall that program. It's just a program. We could rewire that situation, which takes a lot of, I mean, it takes,
Well, Lauren, doesn't that? But it just seems like, I mean, I know the idea you're talking about, but that
Mhm.
feels, when you're rewiring, that's got to feel so foreign and wrong. Because we're so used to saying the same negative thing to ourselves again and again and again, that when you start to, I mean, this thing has decades sometimes on you, and you start rewiring that, it's going to feel like you're like all of a sudden like two left feet, you can't move, it feels gross, it feels wrong, because you want that hit of dopamine that it's going to give you from the negative little thing that you've been doing for the last 20 years.
Absolutely. And by the way, you could get a better and higher hit of dopamine from new patterns, so it's not like you have to leave that behind. But yeah, program disruption, like I'm like, this is major pattern disruption right now, and it's going to be messy, and it's going to be awkward, and it's going to feel uncomfortable, and you're not going to want to do it, and it's going to suck for, I always say that it's going to suck for a while, but how would you rather it suck for this long and then have a lifetime of better relationships or better health or whatever? Yeah, that's typically a good trade. Most people are willing to do that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. If Tom Sandoval, and by the way, so he's gone from one relationship to the next, and a lot of these relationships don't. I mean, they have like, now it's like he's been in this one for like 8 months while he was in this other one for 9 years at the same time, and now he's continuing on with the other one, and the other one is left behind. And he did that before with Kristen Doty as well, who was another cast member on this show. If he came to you and said, "Listen, Lauren, I need your help. What do I do? How do I fix this?" How would you work with somebody like Tom Sandoval?
Well, the first
And by the
thing,
way, or are you at a point where you talk to people and you're like, I don't think I can work with you. Like, I mean, how does it work?
okay, well, to answer your first question, I would dig in. Well, I would dig in and first say, what is so scary about being alone? And from my perspective, I know because the defense structure, there's a lot of narcissism and some sociopathic, like from what I can see, right? There's a lot of, so like narcissistic personalities and defense structure, they cannot be alone. They're starting the next relationship while they're in another one. And they
Uh,
always have like, what's it called in baseball where there's people like
Oh,
the players.
listen, I'm not into sports. I'm
I
like,
don't
yeah,
know.
baseball.
On deck, on
It's
deck.
called yeah, it's called sloppity slip. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah,
Yeah. No, they always have lots of,
a
people on
deep
deck.
bench. Yeah,
A deep bench because it's called a narcissistic annihilation or just ego forms of anxiety or ego where they cannot be alone. It's too much. It's too anxiety provoking for that defense structure. And like that's actually sometimes the best time for if a narcissist like they have enough to like realize like, oh, you know what, I do this. They can be like, I need to be alone for a second to figure this out, but it's really painful for them. So that's on like sitting from my side of the chair. I can see that's what's going on. But when I'm working with people like that, I'm like, what is so scary about being alone, about truly being alone, not
yeah. What is it?
entertaining anything
Is it
else?
the thoughts inside your head when you're alone? Like, what is that fear for most people?
For that defense structure, it's abandonment, and we all have abandonment and like what's called anxious attachment, where it's kind of like, where are you? Why aren't you texting me 5 times an hour? Or you know what I mean? We have that like we
Do you
cannot
not love me?
tolerate.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't love me. I haven't heard from you 10 times today. It's like that anxious, like I cannot stand when you're not around, like because you might leave me. And so instead of healing that, their option or what they choose to do is like have another one, just like like you prepare for an earthquake or something. Like I need this all stocked. I need my like supply stocked, so in case someone abandons me or something happens, I have another one. And it's like this constant void. If you're around people like this, it's like this void of like never ending, like you can never do. You feel like I need to prove myself, or I feel like I need to like be around them all the time or something. You'll feel it within yourself from a person that's like that, and you start acting differently, and then you kind of want to like abandon yourself because it's like, well, they'll find someone else. It's like people can feel it in their gut on this other, on like a very like physical level, visceral
Yeah.
level.
Um, so then for somebody like, I mean, is some of these people like their egos are so big that they couldn't even really work on themselves because you can't convince them that they've done anything wrong? Because a lot of the thing, what I'm hearing too, in terms of Sandoval and stuff like that, is he's still not really getting, there's not a lot of like, he potentially is not putting a lot of blame on himself for a lot of this stuff, even though, to us, this is clearly black and white. But I think to him, there's a lot of gray. And I always talk about the idea that we don't really go through our lives thinking of ourselves as villains. We're the heroes of our own lives. So he has, of course, reasons in his head that he has rationalized all this behavior for. Do you have to know that your behavior is wrong to be able to work on something?
Yeah. There has
Yeah, yeah, I
There
would
has
think
to
so.
be a
Yeah, yeah.
willingness, and for people with that defense structure, I'll call it. It takes a lot because even if they burn every bridge, they'll go find the next like kind of codependent personality or someone to attack rather than be like, hey, I really disrupted or ruined this relationship. It's just too much to take responsibility. So that's what I was saying. Like the willingness has to be there, but if it's not, then it's a hard no. Then it's like, okay, well,
Yeah, there's nothing to be
on to the
done.
next.
We were also talking about the potential idea of him. I mean, he didn't purposely get caught, but he was being very lazy in protecting the secret towards the end, supposedly, where he was almost doing this stuff to get caught because he couldn't face an actual real life conversation with somebody that he was in a relationship for 9 years with. He couldn't be honest with this other person. So the other thought is, okay, I'm just going to get caught and force her hand in
Mhm.
doing this. And a lot of guys, I've heard a lot of my female friends talk about that, this idea of, they can't do this. So they'll make the partner do it because, they don't have the balls to do that. We see that with Tom Schwartz in
Yeah.
Vanderpump Rules, who is his partner, is that he seems very not just lazy, but also there's a fear of hurting people's feelings, of saying what he needs, and he would rather just be the aw shucks good guy and not
Yeah.
really get his feet dirty.
Absolutely. So the
Hands
first thing
dirty,
you're
not feet. Sorry.
all of it,
Feet
right?
dirty.
Like,
Hands all dirty, all dirty.
so the first conflict avoidance is a big thing. When there's all these opportunities for growth and you don't have a healthy way for conflict resolution, that happens. I mean, you could even see it with Schwartz and Katie. Like she can't tolerate anyone else's experience. at all. So then Schwartz kind of cowers into nice guy mode and like, you know what I mean? That whole thing of their dynamic. But yeah, to answer your question, it's kind of like, okay, well, that's just, and it's just another form of not taking responsibility. Like, I'm going to do this thing and kind of like accidentally get caught because then I can just say it without saying it. But I mean, think about that. You can't even go to your partner of 9 years and explain this, or you know, another huge red flag in terms of opportunities for growth, or maybe being on the spectrum of a personality disorder, primarily narcissism and some sociopathic antisocial stuff, because it's a form of not taking responsibility to be conflict avoidant. It
Yeah.
just
No,
is.
I mean, and forcing this hand, there's been such a wave of anger for this. If any of like, I mean, how when you have an extreme personality or an extreme ego and all that, can you speculate of what somebody would feel when they're getting all of this heat on them all of a sudden, or all of this hatred? Or, you know, Raquel's also getting this as well. And I'm not saying it's not deserved in some cases, but there's such a wave of it. In a way, does this embolden a narcissist of like, look at what I created. Of course I'm going to cause this much of a tornado because I'm me. I'm huge.
Mm. So you see that more in borderline personality disorders
And
where
I'm
they're
sorry,
kind of
what
like,
is a borderline personality? What is the definition of borderline?
thank you. Good question. So the term came from, there's a spectrum from like anxiety disorder all the way, and then narcissism is a little bit more intense. And then they found this thing like right before like psychotic, like when you're actually like in psychosis, there's this other thing that kind of looks like narcissism sometimes, but it's on the borderline of psychosis and narcissism. And because borderline people can go off, they can go off into a rage. They can just get like we were talking about offline, like Lala, when she was just like this black and white mode. Borderline people think in black and white terms. So she's like, you're either with me, like telling Shorts, like it's
Yes,
this or
yes,
that. It's
yes.
black or white. Da da da.
Yeah.
It's like it's not a healthy way to think in black and white terms. But so when they think in black and white terms, and if you don't agree with them, they can go into that psychotic kind of rage mode. And so that's where the term came from, because they're kind of on the borderline of that. But
Oh, okay.
it's just another personality, and they're histrionic. Like they're if you have ever been in a relationship with a borderline, sometimes it's so exciting and they're so like charismatic and seductive and all
Passionate.
of
Yeah.
these things. And it's like you hear it described as like the best and worst relationship I ever had. And then they're just a nightmare at the same time. So it's like you never know, and you feel like you're walking on eggshells. There's a book called Walking on Eggshells about dealing with personality or borderline personality disorder. So, and I was bringing that up because
Oh, I
um,
mean, we were
or
talking about in terms of like Sandoval, the idea of like I created this. Look at it, like of course everybody's talking about
oh
me,
yeah,
because I'm such a big star.
I feel like Schwartz wants it to go away. I think I
Yeah,
could
I'm a
see
big
more
fan.
of that. Yeah, I see more of that in Raquel. Like, look at this fire I created behind me. Like
You really
everything.
see that, even though all that we see on the show is this kind of not a perpetual victim, but if this hadn't have come out, we always say this would have been an underdog story where you would have rooted for her potentially. But you're saying that you sometimes see a little bit more, well, because she's finally learning to stand up for herself. She's out of this relationship. She's saying, I don't know who I am. I don't know, like it's that thought of like you're lost in your 20s and you're trying to find your way. And there's some underdog qualities to that, because Lala is yelling at her all the time. And Lala looks like, geez, Lala, calm down. She's like, and you don't think of Raquel as a true threat, or at least I don't when I used to view her. But you're saying, what do you see?
I see. I mean, it feels like Kaiser Soze to me. Like, really, you're gonna act like remember? I'm just kind of like, no, I got your number, and no, I never. I mean, and then you wouldn't even entertain the shorts idea and like let she like I mean Sheena has like some histrionic stuff going on, the pot stirring, and I'm gonna create drama. Fine, but you have a brain of your own, and if you're so smart, 'cause she like Lala would make fun of her being dumb, and it's like, no, I'm smart. Well, if you're smart, then act like it. Then don't turn around and say like Sheena's brainwashing me. No,
Well,
I'm not
that's the other
even.
thing too, is that you have choices in this world, and even if
Mhm.
Tom Sandoval is manipulating Raquel or Svengali her in any way, she still has a choice on
Mhm.
whether to participate in this behavior, participate in this illicit affair. Because, just to point out again, Ariana and her were friends. It wasn't like the three of them were all friends together. They were, but like Ariana and her would hang out like during all of this stuff going on. And that is a choice.
Mhm.
Because even if that relationship was happening, you would think then potentially Raquel would pull away from Ariana and say, it's too much. It's too hurtful for me. I can't deal with that. But she kept being around her.
Exactly. So that's why I'm saying I don't see the underdog thing. I see a lot of like, and we could go to the hurt people thing. Fine. But like, you know what I mean? I mean, this is kind of like a classic example of that, but it's also like resolve your trauma. And I'm not saying that that's easy or fun to do, but then you end up like looking like a total asshole and doing things that are just, you're just surviving and getting by like on all of your character defects that, got you all the pain points and all the pain points that you're upset about, like with your James, like her last relationship, they just get exacerbated if you don't work on them. Now you're in the situation where, you are victimized again, or now you victimized a lot of people because it's like you're just perpetuating the pattern in a different way.
Yeah. Ariana, it's very interesting and how this is played out and how we'll see it play out. But in your, you know, in terms of recommendations of like when somebody's been betrayed so hard like this, where it's got to be shocking. You talk about the Kaiser Soze moment and Usual Suspects of just like, holy shit. And she was directly in that with not only her boyfriend of 9 years, who they share a house together, pets together, but her new friend, Raquel, who she's been to bat for time and time again. How does she go about ever trusting anybody in her life ever again? And this doesn't even have to do with reality television, but like I would be looking over my shoulder nonstop of like, if that can be done to me in my own house
Mm.
and I wasn't fully aware of it, that would like, how does somebody work on that?
Well, I think that and I have a lot of clients like come in hot, like when when having gone through a situation just like this, where kind of the world comes crumbling down. And I really felt for her. Not only that, talk about an immense amount of grief all at once. And then Charlotte, her dog, like the real love of her life,
Yes.
like that was so sad. And so it's just
And then
too
her
much.
grandma passes away in a couple episodes from now that we haven't
Oh
seen yet.
God.
And this
See?
was all going on.
Hmm.
Well, and I think that's one of the excuses he uses, where he's like, I couldn't do it. Well, all this stuff was going on. I couldn't do that to her. But it's like, but you'll keep an affair going behind her back, which is potentially going to hurt her even more when it's revealed.
Right. And then she was with you being loyal when all the chaos from the restaurant and you were doing your thing with the band. And she, from what we know, she wasn't cheating on him. So, but that's just an excuse. Like people will use
Lauren, what's
any
your
type of
favorite Tom
excuse.
Sandoval and the Most Extra song? What's your favorite? No, I'm Jack.
None of
Is
the
that your type of music? Is that your
Towards his
style of music,
mom.
Lauren?
That was
um,
that was kind of funny, but yeah, to answer your question, and you know what, I honestly, and I'm not religious, but I am spiritual, and I do think that I always ask my clients what their spiritual orientation is, not their religion, but because I do think that life will fucking hand you a bunch of shit all at once. Like that's a lot of grief to have at once, but that is a very, very like intense spring cleaning of like, hey, you're going to grieve some things, you're going to get rid of a lot of stuff that's not serving you. And I mean, she's on that movie or whatever,
Yeah,
so
she's on
maybe
a
things are
lifetime. So many
you
cool
know
things are happening, but it's
yeah.
this opportunity that life is making you change. And I was thinking about this idea of like, yeah, in a sense that like this is sucks that it happened, but in a sense,
Yeah.
Sandoval was a huge block for her.
Yeah.
Is that now she's actually maybe able to be who exactly she should be, but the human heart doesn't really think in terms of that. Like we don't go around going, well, thank God this happened, so now I can really grow. Like we don't think
Mhm.
about that at first because we are wrapped up in grief and shock and sadness. And just speaking of somebody that's been through divorce in my past, it's something that hits you at a lot of different times. It's not something that's just like, well, I'm over that, thank you.
Mm-mm.
Like that thing comes back, that haunts you. It affects other relationships in your life. And I just wonder for Ariana is like, how do you make sure you keep 2 feet on the ground and that you I mean, that's so sad that it's okay to love again, which sounds so cheesy, but like, how do you keep
Yeah.
yourself clear of that?
Well, yeah, and grief is not linear. It comes in layers, and it's okay. Like you can have moments of grief and still be in a healthy I think that from something like this, if she was my client, I'd be like, okay, let's take a year off and focus on you because that was a lot of giving of energy and like and all the
Wait, you
grieving
would
that's going on.
recommend to take a year off from therapy? You'd be like, take a year off from
No, no,
therapy?
from dating. I'm sorry, from
Oh, okay. I was
dating.
like, wait, you're like,
Yeah, no, no.
we don't need therapy at all. Just good luck out there.
Bye,
Have fun. We'll see
deuces.
you in a
No,
year.
no, no.
Yeah, yeah. See
No,
you next
absolutely
April.
not, absolutely not. No, I would say, because there's such an intense need to focus on yourself and recover who you are and build up who you are when you have everything getting, like, kinda demolished in a way like that, like, your housing has changed. I don't know if they've done that yet, but, like, everything is shifting and reorganizing, so there's a huge opportunity to focus on yourself, and yeah, sometimes the life universe will do that because we're not strong enough to do it for ourselves. I guarantee if you've been with someone for 8 years, like there were red flags and it's like you can ignore. I mean, because sometimes it's more comfortable than being like, well, I don't want to move. I don't want to start dating again. I've done that in relationships where it's just like it's ostensibly like easier to stay or it's all of that when it's really not.
Yeah.
So
I
it's a
just
gift
wondered what
that's
that is in
happening.
our mind, though, is like these lies that we tell ourselves. And I think a lot of it comes down to like sometimes laziness and selfishness because we don't want to have those hard conversations because it's
Or
easier to
safety.
like,
Our
yeah, there's
safety.
just, yeah, of
You know what
course.
I mean? Like we have a part of our brain, a very um where the breathing and everything is associated, our heartbeat, the limbic system of our brain that just wants to keep us safe. And that's where fears come from. Like, and so a lot of times our fears are not even real, or if we face them, it's like, oh, that's not even a big deal. But yeah, a lot of times we stay in holding patterns that don't serve us because we want to feel safe. And it's like, well, if we change, like change is scary, or I don't know if I could do that alone. We all have the opportunities for growth in that way.
Yeah. Watching Vanderpump Rules this season, though, are there other things that you've taken away? Because I think you watched a lot of episodes at once or like over a weekend or stuff like that. Are there other things that stand out to you going through or watching it? Is there anything of like, oh, wow, like that's this or that's that? And then even to open up larger after that, I know you are a fan of the Housewives. I was just curious of some of your favorite characters on these reality shows, not Vanderpump Rules.
Okay, well, to answer your first part, again, like with the grieving of relationships, and that's such a big thing. Like, the human experience does not, or like in our heart, speaking of like being in your heart, we do not like breakups. They're very, threatening to the ego. And it can be a devastating experience. And then for someone that going on to, or back to James, who has, I mean, he seems like he's an alcoholic to me and has some, very salient narcissistic personality traits. They don't do breakups well. Again, jumping right into another relationship, just like Sandoval, and like, oh, this is the love of my life, trying
Yeah,
to
and a
like,
very
and
like, you're so beautiful, Ali. Oh, your clavicle, it's so amazing, Ali. Like just so effusive in every scene is touching her, like
yeah.
petting her. It's very interesting.
Well, and then she's just being used. I think Lala is the one that says that, like she could be anyone. You're just like basically using. I think she says that at the Lisa threw a little bridal shower for
Oh
like
yeah,
at
for
the. I
Sheena,
think
yeah.
that's when she like oh yeah, because like James was all drunk and acting up, and so but that's true. It's just kind of like I can't tolerate this, and my ego is very wounded right now from you dumping me. So I'm going to get someone else immediately, rub it in your face, and literally try to numb out with this new girl. Just like, because I can't tolerate my feelings of grief. And I'm not saying like grief is a hard feeling to move through and process. And it takes a community of people, and it also takes like really being okay, like tolerating. I mean, and like all
It also
addiction.
takes not being on a reality show, I bet. Like
It
it's
also
probably
takes
not
not
the
being on our
best. It's probably
show.
not the best to be on a reality show when you're moving through these really intense things.
Probably not. It's probably not a good idea to always be drunk. Like, and I mean,
Oh
we know
yes,
that
yes.
like that helps too. But like, alcohol in any form of numbing out, it's just an inability to tolerate the present moment, which James really has a hard time doing. I mean, he, every time he sees Raquel, which is like interesting, but he's just like all triggered. And I think kind of Raquel a little bit gets off on that. But and then
Yeah,
with
I mean, he really is. It keeps coming up of like how obsessed he is with this. And even when the Sandoval stuff broke, which we have not seen yet in the new episodes that'll come out at the end of the season, he online was like literally losing his mind. And I just kept thinking, what about Allie, who's around James right now going like, why are you, I mean, like, this is bad, obviously, but you're in a relationship with me, not her anymore. So why is that, I would think as somebody in a relationship with, I would think I would be a little hurt potentially.
A little. And I mean, I feel like in the last episode, Allie's getting sick of it. She's really kind of
she doesn't seem like a dummy. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
She doesn't seem like, that's the part that I keep getting confused about, because she doesn't seem like a dummy, yet she's putting up with some like really wild behavior. And I just wonder what's that all about too. When somebody feels like they know better, they're even speaking to it in Talking Heads on the show. And she's like kind of making little jokes about it, that I'm like, what is that thing that's keeping her there then, when this pattern of behavior keeps repeating itself with him?
Well, I think that there's a couple of things at play. When you meet someone like a narcissistic type or someone that has like an intense personality, they're so fun at first. They're so charming. They're so like engaging and magnetic. And so you get and you're in love with that and you want that back. You're like, where's that guy? Bring him back. And it's like, that's not really what's going on. And then all this pain and, character defects show up. And then the other thing is like, she's on a reality show. She's on a reality TV show. I mean, she could bow out right now, but like, I mean, she has that option and maybe she doesn't want to. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, hopefully everybody's there for the right reasons, as they say in the Bachelor franchise.
Really?
Yeah, no. What
would the right reasons be?
No, I mean, there is none in terms of. By the way, that's what I always say about reality television. If you're on a reality TV show, you're already suspect. You're already going to exhibit wild behavior at some point in your reality TV show career, or you won't keep coming back season after season. You're somewhat encouraged sometimes to have extreme behavior.
Oh, totally. You'll get kicked off if you don't. And I do think that it kind of is somewhat like placates this human like need that we have to be seen and heard. I think that I see a lot of that. So without saying who it is, I used to live in Orange County. And it's normal.
Already, Vicky Gunvalson. I'm just gonna say it right now. Yeah.
Well, you'll know it's not her from like what I say, but like, so I'm just normal, getting my eyelashes done one Friday, and this woman that I would see all the time is there. And then she was on Housewives of OC. She was a new person at the time. Totally changed. Like came in and was like, oh my, like talking to everyone about like the new season premiere and like how horrible. And then she's like, excuse me, like, can I like actually like take your appointment because stuff to do and I'm running late. And then I'm like, and then I figured it out with my, esthetician. And so it's like, yeah, you could go, because I was fine for the rest of the day, but like where all of a sudden did this shift in personality? It was like this delusion of grandeur. Like now I'm this celebrity. I'm like, you're on a show where something is gonna like your world is probably gonna crumble because that's the only reason you're gonna stay on.
By the way, yeah, your world's gonna crumble. So yeah, you go ahead and take my lash appointment. You're good. Yeah, your world's gonna fall apart in 6 months. So please, I mean, that's the thing is like these things are now modern day gladiators in a way because they're literally putting their emotional makeup on display. And usually, if the reality show is doing its job, will completely beat you down. Like that is something that we expect from our reality television shows. And that's why I think Scandal really kind of reminds us that like, whoa, like it's been a while since something really big, like big and emotional, like we see it, we're so desensitized to Housewives in so many ways, but that's why when something like this, it really stands out because you're like, oh, a 9-year relationship. There's so much pain. He was presenting himself as this other guy over here. Was that performative? It kind of reignites your initial love of reality, but it's like reality television on steroids. Cause then you go back and watch another reality show. I've been trying to watch other things and you're like, this ain't hitting like Sandoval. This ain't hitting. I need somebody to like punch somebody. I mean, our minds get so skewed towards what we expect from these people.
hmm Absolutely. I like this ain't hidden. And it's true. I mean, because in a way it is shocking. I think performative is the key word there, because especially with Sandoval, there's a lot of performative stuff going on.
Yeah,
And
I would say a lot of performative. Yes.
even with how he was relating to Ariana, it never hit like genuine, especially after a while. It wasn't hitting like that genuine to me. And it's kind of like people that have like more, and I'm not saying that he is. I'm just talking about personality types, but people that have a sociopathic type of thing, they can be very performative. It's like, what do you need me to be in this situation so you think I'm the greatest or whatever, or so I could
Oh,
just
yeah, yeah,
stop you
yeah.
from thinking anything. They're very performative people. And then there are other, but the lack of empathy, it can rise to the surface like this situation.
Yeah, completely. But what are some of your favorite reality show characters from your past in watching these shows?
Okay, well, I do like Bethany Frankel, just in general, like reality TV.
Do you like her TikTok? Do you like how she's always expressing her opinions on social media now?
I mean, sometimes it's a little intense, but and then I mean, I love Lisa Vanderpump, and I also like those are two people that I think have used reality TV to their advantage. It's like,
Used is a good word. I feel like both
use
of
it
them
as a
have
tool.
used, but not just reality television. I think they've used people in, like, I think Lisa uses that cast of Vanderpump Rules. I don't think I think she genuinely likes them, but I don't think she genuinely really at the end of the day cares. I think she's thrilled that this has put them back on top. And Bethany's another person that I found interesting because I've really loved Bethany in the past, but I always don't like how she, would degrade the experience of being a
Yeah.
housewife until it serves her, and then she
Right.
wants back on that wagon.
Absolutely, absolutely. And but they're just entertaining. But yeah, and there is okay. You know who else? I not that there was a main character, but I liked Housewives of New York, the one with the crazy eyes.
Ramona.
Ramona's husband. Like, I
Oh,
feel like he's the most
Ramona.
underrated
Ramona's ex-husband.
ex-husband, Mario, most underrated house husband.
Wait,
That is my jam.
you want to give Mario a shout out right now? By the
Yeah,
way, if you're listening, Lauren,
but
I'll
no,
give
no,
you her
no,
information, and
no,
I
don't.
love that. No,
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 but
don't. No,
but
don't.
their dynamic, he was just so like chill about like for the most part.
But then he was
But
cheating on her too.
yeah, exactly. But there's that too.
Um, that I mean, now I'm just like I'm now thinking about Bethany, but what is that in a person where I always think with these people, it's like they get to the mountaintop. Like we saw Bethany in the original seasons of Housewives, and she was like
Yeah.
hustling. She was starting
Yeah.
her brand, and she actually built it into something huge where she sold it and she
Mhm.
became wealthy. And we saw when it wasn't always the case with her. And it was this insane moment of showing all this hard work and passion and stick to it, just sticking to something. And then now it's like, instead of enjoying that, it feels like she needs that attention economy. She needs eyes on her. When
Mhm.
I sometimes think, well, isn't the whole point of doing that so you can go escape and live this amazing life? But it
You
never
would
seems to
think.
be the case with these people.
You would think. And then yeah, and that's what I did like about her so much is that she had this underdog quality and like, hustled and built this empire. And she's funny. Like I haven't watched
Yeah.
anything of her recently, but I do like her sense of humor. And but I do think like they go into a lot of her childhood, and like her how she grew up and like the things with her dad and money being up and down
Yeah.
and chaotic, and then her mom was gonna like write some book. I mean, that's a lot of trauma she's been through, and I feel like part of me kind of saw myself in her. Like I'm like that's a lot of that's intense to have your parents do all of that, and but I do think that when let's say I'm not saying anything about her directly or anyone at all that I've mentioned so far, not saying anything directly, but I do think that if you don't resolve like your childhood trauma, it will show up in your relationships and you will what ostensibly looks like addiction to drama. It's kind of like, yeah, like at this point she could go whatever, live her best life and not, but there's something that's like feeding that maybe in not the most adaptive way. So there could be that. I don't know what she's doing. You know what I mean? We're all healing at
Yeah.
our own pace. We're all healing at our own pace, but that's
At
what
our
I'm
own pace,
saying.
guys, go slow down. You got your own pace to deal with. In terms, I was thinking a lot about men and women because just of this situation. I mean, we always think about men and women regardless, but in your work, What do you know, like the key differences between men and women? I know that's such a broad
Mm.
question, but I keep thinking about like these personalities, especially on reality television shows, that keep popping up. You know, these certain types of personalities or these certain types of behavior that men do and certain types of behavior that women do. And we see these kind of highlighted on these shows. You know, is there anything that pops to mind when I say that?
Well, I always talk in terms of, and because I talk in terms of masculine and feminine, especially if I'm dealing with like a gay couple, and I'm like, because there's a masculine energy and a feminine energy. Sometimes it's true with like heterosexual couples, like the typical masculine qualities the woman has, and vice versa. But like, what do you
Well, I just
specifically
like,
mean? Like
well,
or what
I
do
just
you
think that
observe?
what is it about this is what is it about men that seems like it's the same pattern? We got Schwartz cheating in the past. We got Sandoval. I mean, Schwartz. I keep talking about like he mentioned in the earlier show of like, oh, I don't know about dating. It would feel like cheating on Katie, even though we're divorced. And I'm like, but you actually did cheat on Katie. So why did like you? It seems like something that you were really adept at. Like, why would it feel weird? It's like you got that. You got Kyle Cook on Summer House. You had Mario on Real Housewives of New York. You have all of these men that tend to just go to. I'm just trying to think about what it is about men that really think of themselves in certain situations where women seem to. Not saying that women don't cheat. I'm definitely not saying that, but I'm saying it seems to be more rare than all of the examples of men. I'm just trying to understand the
Hmm.
differences of that. I mean, I'm not sure if there's been studies, but it just seems
Oh,
like
there has been.
do women take into account men's feelings more than men take into account women's feelings? I know, by the way, if you're listening at home and rolling your eyes, I'm sorry. I'm trying to learn, folks.
No, 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 no. And by the way, men cheat just as much as women, or women cheat just as much as men. And there's new studies coming out that women cheat more.
It's
And
just they're better at it. Is that what you're?
or or
They just don't
or
get caught.
they don't get caught, or it's emasculating to for people to find out that your woman cheated on you, but like women could be a victim and that's okay. There's that piece too. So the guy won't, talk about if it doesn't get out there, and that's just, I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm just saying that some men find that emasculating and they'd rather just forgive, forget, like sweep it under the rug type of thing. That's some of the new research that's being done. But men cheat when they don't feel appreciated, typically from the research, or the masculine entity in the relationship doesn't, when they don't feel appreciated or emasculated, or they feel emasculated, or they're not getting the type of attention that they need, typically like physical attention. And women cheat when they feel like their emotional needs aren't met, when they're not seen and heard. And I mean, I hear it all the time. He doesn't hear me. He doesn't. And like, you know what I mean? Like, he's not fucking listening to me. And so, but I mean, I can say, like, if I don't feel heard, if I feel heard, I'm like super turned on. I'm like, oh my God, he listened. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? But if it's not, I'm like, I understand that. I have estrogen coursing through my brain. And so that, it'll either trigger me or turn me on. And then with men, being appreciated is a big, I mean, what do you think? Like, I mean, from what I hear, that's
Well,
what.
that is that there's that thing where it's like, of course, somebody telling you you're good or that you're
Mhm.
likable or that of course, that's all, like, look, listen, guys just want to be told we're pretty. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, that's what we basically, so it's like really nice to hear those compliments. But I think sometimes it's interesting because we will take those superficial, quick compliments more than a deep relationship. A multi-year relationship will sometimes give more credence to those quick hits than a long-term relationship. It's always like something new and shiny will always seem to catch a guy's eye
And
in certain situations.
that's why I'm always telling couples, it's like you have to continuously date your partner, and you have to with all your might and strength, like, do your work, so you're not getting, even if your partner triggers you, do that work on your own, and then come back 3 days later and talk about it. And I know that's so, because like, I mean, I have those moments where I'm like, I need to talk about this now, I'm pissed. But if you want to keep that alive and you want to keep that connection, it's just better to do it. It takes so much discipline, it takes so much inner work, but I think that it's worth it to do that and keep your relationship. I mean, you watch the Chris Rock special, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
okay, he talks about the difference between dating a 25-year-old and a 40-year-old. It's like,
Yes.
oh, like the 25-year-old's like, oh, daddy, like, look at my high heels or whatever. And it's like, do that. And I mean, some of my female like clients at first, they get mad and I'm like, no, like that's a form of appreciation. Just be fun and sexy. And I'm not saying to
Yeah,
do
but
that
then
all the
doesn't that
time.
then build up hatred towards the male because you're like,
No,
I'm doing role play all of a sudden?
no, not all
Not
the
being my
time.
authentic self?
No, you can be your authentic self and you could have needs and they could be met, but they also need to be done like not in the I don't think it's always, and sometimes this just has to happen. It's like the heat of the moment and we need to go at it and like fight it out. But I do think on the regular, if you do your work, like, why is this triggering me? Why? And if it's something that's triggering you, it's from the past. Like if it's hysterical, it's historical. It's from the past. It's like it's there for you to do, like, because if your partner isn't doing it, someone else will. But our partner is a mirror for us in a lot of ways of like unhealed trauma. So it's like work on yourself first and do that work, like have a little bit of pause and then be like, hey, you know what, can we talk right now? It's not a big deal, but that actually hurt my feelings or
Well,
whatever it did.
yeah, I mean it's complete. Yeah, you're right. It's just very. When do you know it's okay? Well, I always think like, do you like even with Tom? There must have been a moment where Tom knew that his relationship with Ariana wasn't working. He was already checked out completely and knew for him it was over.
Or
When
maybe not.
do Well, I mean, we'll find out, I guess, but it'll be interesting to find out. But most time when people get caught cheating, they end up begging to get their partners back, and that's not what that's not what's happening
No.
here. And I wonder,
But that's what I
I
mean.
get,
Like to him, the relationship's fine. Like I'm getting my ego
yeah,
needs met.
everything's good for me. Yeah.
You're basically on the way out, Ariana, and I'm doing my thing where I'm filtering someone in and using someone else. I mean, it's kind of like it's James is doing the same thing, but in a more like histrionic way. But it's the same thing. It's like, okay, I don't want to grieve. I don't have the tolerance, the ego tolerance to grieve a relationship or admit I was wrong about anything. So what I'm going to do is like, let this kind of drift away. Ariana has to, if you're with someone for 9 years, what's going on and whatever. That's what I'm saying with her, like the universe did her a favor and is clearing a lot of stuff out. And if she's not seeing that right now, she will. But, and then with Tom, or I'm sorry, yeah, with Tom, what I'm saying is like, I think he's probably like, this is fine for me. I'm on to the next. And then, Raquel's releasing these statements like, I'm just going to work on myself and my self-care.
Yeah, yeah, I'm like, show me the work. Like that's what like everybody says they're going to work on themselves, but I doubt sometimes any of these people are working on themselves. Like that's what's great about reality television shows is they're always they're always telling us, not showing us. And like they'll always say they're doing the work and I'm doing the hard work, and then they're like I always know that they're never doing the hard work. Jax Taylor was a prime example of that on Vanderpump Rules in older seasons. Also, I just wanted to, as we start winding down here, there's a few, I remember going through like some of my most traumatic moments is that the body or the mind protects you in a way where looking back on it, I'm like, how did I get through that? Like, I don't think I was getting a couple hours of sleep at night. Like I was thinking about like some of these really traumatic events and going like, wow, I don't think I could deal with that now. But when you're in it, you just kind of go, your body and your mind protects you to kind of just keep moving. And it doesn't mean it's like fun or good like that, but like you're in a fugue state almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you don't want to constantly be in an adrenalized state and where cortisol levels are constantly spiked, but that is, fight and flight mode of the stress responses. We have fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. And so that's fight, flight mode. When you're fighting or flight, and then you're that adrenalized state, and that's what gets you through it. And then you look back and you're like, what the fuck,
Yeah, no, I mean, it really is that looking back and going, wow. Listen, Lauren, this went way too quick. I'm already going to ask you back. I need to hear your Kardashian take. I
Oh
need
my
to hear
God,
your
I'm so
Beverly
we talked about
Hills.
this offline. Yeah.
Listen, will you come back? Because there's so much that
Absolutely.
this feels like it went 10 minutes. So Lauren, how do we find out more about you? Like, how do we find out? I mean, like, there's potentially some people in Los Angeles that might want to work with you and stuff. What do you recommend? Or how do we know when we have things to work on? I mean, I know we know, but like, Why would we seek somebody like you out?
If you want to thrive in every area of your life, if you want to work on your imposter syndrome, that's one of the things I specialize in, as I was talking about. But I love helping people, through the transformation process. And there's always something to work on. I always want to help people with the highest and best versions of themselves. And at any given moment, that looks different. So
Is it really gratifying for you doing
it's
what
so
you do?
gratifying. I love it. I love what I
Yeah.
do. So, but and
Because
to
each day has
go
got to be different too. Each day is a
every
new
day.
challenge. Yeah.
Oh, it's never the same, which I also love. But I'm at Mental Health Hacker on Instagram, and that's like my main platform. So there, and then my website is Lauren Clayton Total Health. But if you DM me, and especially if you say you're a friend of Ryan's, and I will get back to you for sure.
Yeah, and you guys, I'll put all of that in the show notes, and I'm definitely gonna have Lauren back on again because this is just to me. I'm like, oh, I'm just like a kid in a candy store. I'm like, this is so great to be able to put language to some of these thoughts, and I know I can sometimes go at like kind of a cutting, humorous slant. So it's nice. It's nice to class up the joint sometimes, basically. um, but anyways, Lauren, I really appreciate you being here. I hope you had a good time. I hope this was
I
a
had such
good
a good
use of your
time.
time.
Yes.
And I look forward to having you back on again and again. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I can't wait to be on again.